Hey Weirdos, this is Evan Jarvix with Make Oklahoma Weirder, and this is your local music vlog for the week. It is June the 21st, Friday afternoon, and I'm going to kick things off with the Lunar Laugh, who dropped a new album today, and thank you, Lunar Laugh, for giving me an advanced listen of it. It is fantastic. If you're a fan of the Lunar Laugh, you won't be disappointed, and if you do follow the Lunar Laugh closely, you know that I think they kind of get pigeonholed a little bit as kind of an older-fashioned, kind of safe, kind of pop band, but I tend to think that they actually try a lot of really interesting things that not a lot of bands do, especially when it comes to arrangement and when it comes to the studio. I will say, songwriting-wise, the songwriting tends to be very classic, in my opinion, but definitely when it comes to modern mixing choices and arrangements, there's some really interesting things that go on here, and I think that pertains to really the whole catalog of what the Lunar Laugh has done since they were a two-piece, now a four-piece with sort of an extended, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in the studio. There's some really nice kind of chamber orchestral elements that you can hear in bits and pieces on this album, and just some really nice mixing choices, and always the harmonies. The harmonies are so great. Just wish more bands would do harmonies like this, because it's so blissful and pure and wonderful. But anyway, Lunar Laugh, new album, solid stuff. They had a couple of tracks leading up to this, and one of them came out last year, and it sounded like it definitely sounded like a Lunar Laugh track, kind of in keeping with the sort of music that they had been making. But then they dropped one a few months ago that kind of turned some heads, definitely turned mine. Sounds nothing like the Lunar Laugh. It's called Waiting for a Sign or Waiting on a Sign, I forget. But it sounds like a much more modern, trendy sort of synth pop thing, kind of with the modern retro 80s thing that's going on, very much in league with that. But since it is the Lunar Laugh, they bring their own sort of original spin on it, which to me makes it even better than something like that. Honestly, it's one of my favorite songs of the year, and there's a cool music video that goes with it too, although I don't totally understand the marriage of image and sound. But anyway, the Lunar Laugh, the new album doesn't sound like that song. So if you know what I'm talking about, if you know that song, that's the only song that sounds like that. So everything else sounds a lot more like what you would expect from a Lunar Laugh album. The last album they put out was called Mama's Boy, which was in my big 50 of that year. I think this continues some of those ideas, but there's definitely, there's a bookend concept on this, and some of the songwriting and performances feel even more collaborative than they've ever been, with other singers taking the lead, which I know is a thing with the original duo. But between listening to this album and then reading, there was a really good Gazette article about this album on the way that kind of went into that whole collaborative process, and you can definitely hear that. It seems like every album strays just a little bit further away from those Jared Lekeit's solo records that predate the Lunar Laugh. But anyway, shout out to those guys. Great album, and I'm sure those European folks are going to continue to love your work as well. There's album release happening on Saturday at Breathing Rhythm, even though they recorded at Lunar Manor. But it's I think $20, but it includes a copy of the record, which if you choose for it to be vinyl or CD, that's up to you. But $20 for admission to a full play of the record live as a band, plus getting a vinyl record, that's a steal. So I know that they were really selling through some tickets, and I know it's a smaller space. So if there's still some seats, get you a seat. Okay, moving on. Gotta mention the So Help Me's because they are putting on a really cool sounding show tonight at the Factory Obscura space, the mixtape space that's at the Womb on Automobile Alley, which has been getting some buzz, of course. It's their third space, and they just continue to be a cool thing for the community. And the So Help Me's has always been really great about integrating art with their music, whether it's through live performances or whether it's through collaborations with other organizations. They've always been really interested in pushing the envelope, and so I'm really excited to hear that they've been collaborating with other local musicians from a lot of bands that I'm really into, and they're putting on this whole solstice-themed show that's a collaboration with Factory Obscura as well, that apparently uses music from the Beatles' Abbey Road, which is also very exciting. So I'm not sure how exactly all that's being worked into the production, but that happens tonight at 7:45 p.m., and I'm assuming that time has significance. I don't know anything about solstices, but I know they do because a couple years ago they put out a single on a solstice date, so I know that the So Help Me's are very into that celestial stuff, which makes a lot of sense if you listen to their lyrics very closely. So the So Help Me is continuing to just push the envelope of what it means to be a local band, and I just really appreciate what they do. So shout out to them and everyone who's working with them and supporting them. Cat Lock has a new single that's coming out tomorrow. I've also happened to got an early listen to that, and it's great. It's Cat Lock is to me, more than a singer-songwriter. You think of a singer-songwriter, and it's like, someone who writes a song for guitar and you play solo and might have a backing band that fills things out. But she's kind of like that rare breed that really cares about the arrangements, and almost like, not unlike the Lunar Laugh, which I just talked about, where there's a much fuller vision to what's going on. And I really like some of the instrumental choices. I know there's some horns on this single, and there's some really nice harmonies from a couple of other major singers that just sound really good and are purposefully chosen and purposefully written so that it's not just harmonies all the time, but like where they are is intentional. So I just really continually enthusiastic about what Catlock is doing post Saint Basic as kind of the ringleader of this project. And then an EP, I believe, or LP. It's a new record is on the way, and so I'm definitely looking forward to that. Steelwind has a new album. If you don't know Steelwind, they are a bluegrass band. At least, maybe not like a 100% purist, old-fashioned bluegrass band, but definitely a bluegrass-sounding band that plays with maybe some folk, Americana, country ideas. Their third full-length album, Blue, is out now, and they have an album release tomorrow at the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum in Oklahoma City. So these guys are really great. They've definitely gotten a following. They had probably the biggest crowd of anybody at Plaza Fest last year, even though they weren't even the headliner. They just went in the middle of the day, but people were eating that stuff up. Ever since they were kind of a two-piece, they've really broadened out to really kind of give you that full band feel, and I really like what they're doing. I liked their last record, F5, and so haven't listened to all of Blue yet, but I know they had a lead single from that I liked, so shout out to those guys dropping a new record. And Crim, really quick, Crim from Tulsa, they dropped a whole bunch of micro songs last year. Those are officially out now for you to stream as well on something. I think they just called it Sumner, like summer, but with an N. So those guys are super weird. Shout out to them. Pretty much out of time, but Slamfest is happening tomorrow at the Dojo. If I can go, I'm going to try to go, because it's like a who's who, in my book, of like major recent up-and-coming like metal acts. If you're into like death metal and slam and all that stuff, where it's just really hard as nails and people will be moshing. It's at the dojo, so you can get away with that. Really, really digging the lineup for Slamfest 2, which is happening. And it's free, and it's all ages, Saturday.